Record this to the cloud. There you go.
Now, I do want to state, if you're not comfortable being on camera for that, you're absolutely fine hiding your view and not being on camera. Totally respect your privacy with that. All right, so let's talk about this in human terms. In human terms, it's how do we get them involved? And is what we're thinking about doing or what we've seen people do actually work? So let's find out. Let me introduce you to a few terms. And the terms that I really want to revisit with you are important in the respect that they are the main terms that come up in this. Game isn't as easily defined as you may think it is. Experts like Carl Kapp is known for instructional design and the implementation of gamification. He created one of the first books in 2012. Jane McGonigal, you watched her TED Talk. She became making really huge breakthroughs in the gaming industry, gaming and social setting, helping with social issues and nonprofits, and solving wicked problems. She's also really big about how games do make a difference. And then Wilkinson in 2016, and what they emphasized was the need for a more concrete definition of what we meant by a game. Now, differentiating play from a game was critical, and what we said is that games were rule-based systems involving challenges and abstract elements directing player interactions and providing feedback and evoking emotional responses. That's what that is all about. Now, it was important to also acknowledge the diverse range of games. And many of you are going to be familiar with the fact that we have tag, right? So we have physical games that we can play. We have strategic games, say like chess, but we also have role-playing games, which Kay said you all had a really good time and were really creative with role-playing. And the next thing with that, you also have structure is what we're talking about. You're really specifically trying to achieve something, whether it's an advanced level or new challenges or get a specific score to beat somebody else. Now, McGonigal's initial work in this area was groundbreaking in the fact that she introduced a distinctive definition of a game, and it was rooted in four fundamental traits. You had goals, you had rules, you had feedback systems, and voluntary participation in these. And heck, you've seen what we do with poker and the professional poker. And if you ask me afterwards, I'll bring up someone's book that you need to read, who is a psychologist who decided, I think I'm going to go and play professional and become a professional poker player, and earned a lot of money, and tracks her process in this particular book. So anyway, just ask me afterwards and I'll tell you about it. Now, as time has moved forward from 2010 to 11, Myers et al. Came into this arena about 2016 and highlighted 5 reasons games were crucial in an educational setting. First, games allowed the incorporation of learning and doing. In other words, application. Second, they facilitated the development of social skills and competence within teams, collaboration, cohesion, and this was accomplished by participants actually learning from one another. Third, games increased learner engagement, right? And that's the key. We want them engaged. Fourth, games provided a safe space for taking risks, learning from failure, and learning without experiencing harm, which is a very important thing that we want people to do when it comes to creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We want them to have the ability to take risks and be able to handle the failures and turn them around. And what I call in my courses, pivots, learning lesson and pivots. Now, finally, the 5th one they came up with was games should be customized to suit the learner and the learning context. I want you to remember that and make a note of it. Games should be customized to suit the learner and the learning context. We're going to go into that when we talk about game elements more. Now, the conclusions drawn by Mayer et al., as well as McGonigal's traits of goals and feedback systems, laid the foundation for the appeal of incorporating games in a non-game environment early on. Now, this field is youngish when it comes to gamification and it actually being differentiated from games and game-based courses. And so that's going to bring us into game-based learning. Now, the investigation into defining game-based learning compared it with gamification concepts, and it emphasized the need for clear definitions. And the term game-based learning was explored often and is often confused between gamification and game-based. So this is not unusual. We're talking about Osweiler in 2018, discussing that we still have this confusion, and Isaacs in 2015. Now, Hellerstedt and Manzulius in 2019 actually did a comparative literature review that traced the historical role of games in education from ancient board games to their significance in learning science theories of Piaget and Vygotsky. Now, they noted that the history of game-based learning of board games actually goes beyond chess, but to something called Kalea and Zhangji, I think is how it's pronounced. So we're talking centuries back, okay? And Isaacs in 2015 delved into this distinction between gamification and game-based learning. Now, in his blog post in 2015, Isaacs compared gamification and game-based learning, clarifying that gamification involved applying game elements in non-game contexts. All right, now that definition or that concept is commonly accepted and has been since about 2010 when we see the term gamification appear in the literature, and really goes back to Dettering and Nakey and his colleagues, which said, yeah, gamification is its own unique concept. Okay, so this is how young this field is. Now, while game-based learning utilizes games to facilitate or shape the learning process, okay? So again, gamification takes game elements, whereas game-based is using games to facilitate or shape the learning process. DeCarvajal and Colio in 2022 summarized game-based learning as focusing on designing games with specific learning goals. And as seen in the use of games in educational settings, it's really not a new phenomenon to have games. We can go back to Malone and Lepper, and especially Malone's work in the late 80s or the late 70s and early 80s. Now, in essence, game-based learning was methodically employed to facilitate learning and achieve learning outcomes, where well-designed games prompted learners to willingly invest their time and energy in problem-solving activities. And that's coming from Harumi et al. In 2010 and Cap in 2012. All right, so that kind of gives you a little bit of a brief overview of games, game-based learning, and gamification. So now that I've given you more information than you probably really wanted to know to provide you this foundation of role games have been playing in education, why don't you tell me how you would define gamification? So you tell me how you understand what gamification is. What does it look like in a classroom in 2024? Anybody can answer. You can put it in the chat or you can come on mic. I'm perfectly open to that.
Hi, everybody. Anastasia is my name. I'm from Toronto. Like for me, gamification, I would like the best definition would be uh, a teaching method that moves away from the traditional teaching in a way that incorporates game elements.
Okay.
In order to engage the students.
Okay.
So these game elements, it's not necessarily using games in the lesson, but there could be a gamified approach to something. For example, if there is a presentation and students are reluctant to publicly speak and so on, there could be a gamified, like roll a dice, whoever has the highest number is next. This could be an example of gamification in the classroom. It could be also using parts of games Like, for example, the little from Monopoly, the Monopoly money to learn numeracy with little children. Again,
Okay.
this is something very haptic. It could be using a game concept in the lesson to make a parallelism with something, to abstract something to make it simple and so on.
Okay.
So as like for classroom-based scenarios.
Okay.
Now, generally, gamification in education, I believe it's a new way of learning, uh, partly because there has been a strong cultural shift in the new generation. Like games are incorporated everywhere in our lives. We have them on our phones, we have them on computers, we have our board games, we have our toys, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure lots of adults hang on to some of their favorite toys. So our children, our youth, they're exposed to the idea of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately or unfortunately, not many people want to earn something the hard way. They want to enjoy it. Okay. So the traditional lecture-based classrooms, they exist in a very few institutions nowadays, I believe.
Okay.
Right?
So,
And so probably so in schools. We want to, whatever we do, we want to enjoy what we're doing,
mhm.
and we find ways of using things from our lives there where we have sort of like fond memories of, and a game is perfect for that,
Okay.
or a play approach,
Okay.
for example.
So, all right.
So very
So,
neutral definitions there. So.
all right. So, Anastasia, what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize that and wish me luck in about 2 sentences or less.
Okay.
So, what Anastasia has said is we have a new generation who wants to have fun in the classroom, and it's our job to add elements to the classroom that will make it fun. How did I do?
Not necessarily our job, but we move on with the social change.
So mirroring what our students, so maybe being a little bit more user-centered in there.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
say that,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants, thank you, Anastasia. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to add to what you would define gamification as? And if someone's monitoring the chat for me, that would be brand steak and awesome. Oh, I love it. You have Vygotsky. I love Vygotsky.
Yeah, so a couple of comments that we have. I go myself. Okay, so a couple of comments that we have are from Kath, incorporating features like points, badges,
Mm-hmm.
leaderboards and progress tracking.
Mm-hmm.
I said applying relevant game elements, theory, and mechanics into teaching and learning to enhance or ideally transform the learning experience.
Okay.
Chris said you also have products like Classcraft and Resly.com, but that's a 3D games lab that is now defunct that look to offer an LMS platform with built-in characteristics.
Okay. All right. Very good. So let's keep moving forward and see if I agree with y'all or not. I'm not giving away my secrets yet. All right. So let's just dive in a little bit more. Anastasia made this really clear, and I think several of you are thinking this. Please don't be afraid to. This is a risk-free environment as far as I'm concerned, but I think all of us would agree, hands down, that learner engagement is a gold standard for learning, right? And we know, or our gut tells us, if someone's engaged, they're more likely to create the schema, able to see how it's implemented, see where things go wrong and how to do it right. So problem solving, and will later be able to recall it better, right? As learning experts, well, I'm pretending to be a learning scientist at this point. And so let's talk a little bit more. So as we said, in 2010, we begin to see how gamification emerged as a new focus in academic research. And so not only do we see it as a gold standard, and we start accepting it, what we find is a lot of people just start throwing things together and say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's very hodgepodge. It's still very hodgepodge to 2024. And that's what we find is a lot of mixed results. Along the way, really common things that got studied in gamification were learners' characteristics, how they impacted engagement, from Richard Bartle's work on learner player types to Yin, who built further on to Richard Bartle's original works, to looking at Bateman and Nackey's work, where they're looking at personality traits and actual brain physiology. And then in 2020, we had someone propose the gamification learner typology, which was Daichev and al. And basically they said there were 5 types of learner types. That's what they proposed. And that's what I was trying to study in my dissertation. Now, the other thing that came out during this, it's really important, is the role of motivation. Now, most of the research, and I mean, people have actually done research on this, points back to people saying it's self-determination theory that can explain gamification success or lack of success. And just to remind you, when we talk about Ryan and DC's work, or DC and Ryan's work of self-determination, it's autonomy, it's competence, and it's relatedness. And those are things that you really do find in games and different types of games, whether it's role-playing games, it's you all can name the different types. I'm thinking D&D. I'm thinking I want to say shoot 'em up and kill 'em types, but I'm not coming up with the correct first-person shooter games, I think is what the name of that is. And again, you know, but what Daichev points out, and why we're here today in this session, is that Daichev and his colleagues have pointed out there's more motivational aspects to learning and drivers. And so what they said is that game elements can have demotivational influences and impact on learners as well as motivational. And in addition to, so there's an interaction that's happening between 2 motivators, the learning activities themselves, as well as the game elements. And when we fail to understand the intersection, we're going to continue to implement other people's stuff without it being grounded in a sound model or a theory, and we'll continue to have mixed results. And so it's important to understand these. And now what Daichev and his colleagues are doing is they're looking at what used to be known as expectancy value theory, which was Eccles' works from 1983, and Wiggins and Eccles, Wigfield and Eccles, who've been doing a lot of work, particularly with youth and adolescents. And it's now called situated expectancy value theory. And they're finding that EVC, using the expectancy value cost scale that Flake and colleagues came up with starting in 2015, is that the cost of participating in these types of activities may be a better predictor of whether students are actually going to engage or not. And so this is what emerged and what I studied in my dissertation. And the bottom line was, in the study that I did, it was in an accounting course here at the School of Business at UAB in Birmingham, Alabama. And the purpose of creating the gamification really goes back to some of what Anastasia said. We wanted to create communities for our online learners, and we wanted to create social networks. And so Chris Edmonds and his colleagues created a gamification platform. And the platform was a really interesting platform. And it got built out in Microsoft Teams, and it's actually in Slack as well. So you can write this down and check them out. It's called Class Cred, CLASS, and then Cred, CRED. And no, I'm not advertising them. I'm just telling you what we use in the school business. And I would prefer to use it in Slack, but I'm stuck using Teams. I can't win no matter what direction I go in. All right. So but on a serious note, Anastasia hit it again. It's making a boring class more fun, right? We level up for the first time, and they created a surprise. None of the students knew that there was a game behind this, and that the person who hit level 21st became a GOAT, greatest of all time, or at least the greatest in the class, right? And each level had a little surprise and a little tip of how to earn points. And then there were challenges. Each of these is a game element, all right? So Dr. Edmonds was really trying to take an accounting course, which was required, and the accounting courses and some of the finance courses are all gamified in this system. Now, it's not new. Dettering in 2015, Hannes and Fox in 2015, Cap in 2012 and 2016, and Majuri all said that this is a driver for a lot of instructors to implement gamification in their classrooms. Now, when a learner began leveling up, as I told you, they would get a cool little message that would pop up and they would get points. The course was designed to have debates and polls as well. And the reason there's a little asterisk there is that unfortunately, for me, the instructor leading this course had no clue why the gamification was there and didn't implement the challenge element. And the challenge element becomes really important because are you going to be gamifying and encouraging engagement on quality or on quantity? And in this instance, when you don't create challenges where they can safely apply concepts for you to see, are they able to apply them? Are they able to have debates? Are they able to support their arguments? You really aren't necessarily getting the quality that you were looking for, but rather encouraging behavioral engagement. Behavioral engagement is the easiest one sought because it's the easiest one measured. Did they click? Did they not click? Did they give a thumbs up? Did they not give a thumbs up? We can do output all day long in analytics to let us know this information. But when it comes to quality, which is our expertise, now that's missing. So I want you to think about that because this is a theme for me to bring up with you in a little bit. Now, that was the purpose. Here was the intervention. Chris introduced this to all of everybody plays his 7.5 minute video. I play it in my class. My wife plays it in her class, in her management and her HR course that she teaches, right? So they all know how to use Microsoft Teams and the channels, and then class cred. We introduce how they can do fires and points, and we even give them an opportunity to do dragons. Just an FYI, our mascot is a dragon. His name is Blaze, and dragons blow fire, hence dragons and fires, right? So Chris knew what he was doing when he developed this. So you have different activities, you tag peers, where to find accumulated points, so a kind of a dashboard, and then of course the class store. In the research, having a class store is a very good thing. Here's what I want you to think about though. Is this class store going to be for individual? Is it going to be collaborative or both? If you're encouraging collaboration, social networking, then you're going to want to have items where the whole class or a chunk of the class is contributing so that the whole class benefits, whether it's a study guide, a cheat sheet, an exam, whatever it is, bonus points on an exam. So these are some of the things that goes in the class store. When Daichev et al., or it was either Daichev et al. Or it was Huang and Hu, did a study, and they found that I think it was Huang and Hu, the class store is something that actually came out statistically significant. So it did make a difference. But think about it. If we look at expectancy value and cost, if I can get something, if something comes up and I can submit an assignment late or I can do a do-over, that's worth the cost of me participating so that I can get something. It becomes worth my time. I want you to think about those things. Now, gaming happens in the system, and in the literature, we find that students game. By the way, they game in class cred. And so what Chris tried to do was set this off by creating a tax. Here's what he says. Beware of taxes. If you try to game the system by only giving fire to your friends, a gift tax will be applied. For example, if you give more than 6 fires to the same person in a given week, 50% gift tax will be applied. If you give more than 10, the gift tax rate will be 90%. So again, if you try to game the system, he's built in an algorithm to try and offset that. And yes, just like your students will cheat, they will try and figure out how to game the system. I'm just going to let you know that that is going to happen. All right. Now, as we said, learners first discovered that they were playing a game. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't have an answer for you. The literature says the game should have surprises because that's what keeps people coming back. You'd have to do research to see what the students thought of that. Okay, that's not something that I did. All right. Now, I used a mixed method to do this. And I'm not sure why my research questions are. Oh, there we go. These were my research questions. Excuse me. I'm like, wait a minute, where did they go? So what I was trying to do was create a scale to see what Daichev and Daicheva's gamification learner types, did it work, did it not work? Well, go imagine we had social bias. Students all thought that they were the best learner. They loved to learn. They didn't care what the course was. They were independent, right? They were the best. They're all of us. So if we gave them a term, they would go out. It's totally worth learning something new because we'll figure out how to apply it. Okay, so bulk of them said over 50% on the first part survey who participated, and 63% said, "Oh, I'm a capable explorer." Now, to give a little bit of credit, some of them really were capable explorers. They were accountants, they were finance majors. So they clearly were motivated to learn this information and participate. So I want you to know that that did exist. Did the type that they were, the gamification learner typology, impact the number of activities? Well, since I failed on number one, I failed on number two. And that's because I didn't have enough differentiation. But what we found interesting was the way they participated and the way they responded in certain channels. Now, because we didn't have challenges and polls, I don't know if we would have gotten the same quality that we saw in the exam channel. And we saw two types of things emerge in the mixed methods, and I'll show that to you in a second. And then the last one was, how did students' perceived costs moderate their impact? Well, quite frankly, because it didn't have enough differentiation and it didn't have enough participation, we couldn't say that cost moderated or didn't, but we absolutely saw a difference in EVC. That definitely became apparent. Not so much as expectancy. So let's look at the integrated way this worked. So the survey one question and two basically said what motivated you in learning and what demotivated you in learning. And three is, why did you participate? Okay. So what we found is that the tool isn't necessarily bad, but it does need to be retooled, so to speak. And mixed method testing, we really needed, or I really need to follow this up where we have some interview or focus groups so we can do a better triangulation and ask them more. The second one was improving the measurement tool again, and really looking at activities that each type values. And quite frankly, we may find that they value similar activities, that the proposed gamification learner typology may not be right in that respect. Now, on questions 3 and 4, don't ask me why these didn't show up the right way. Usually I'm a lot more consistent. So we needed to improve the question, or the question to assess the content analysis. So again, I needed to use content analysis, which was actually looking at the threads themselves. And that is not what I chose to do, because the data entry for that would have been hellacious, even with a low number of people. It would have been really tough to do in such a short period of time, given that I wanted to graduate before 7 years was up. The other part here is that it was beneficial to include a survey question to explore learners' preferences regarding who answered the questions or the role of the instructor that they preferred. This was a tough class for me. The instructor had lost her husband about 3 months prior to this class starting. So there were a lot of issues potentially going on, and there was a failure of fidelity of implementation, as Century et al. Has studied before. In research question 4, what we found is a category or a theme of help. And on the pre-survey, students were more inclined to seek help for themselves. They were me focused. But by the time we got to the post survey, they became other focused, which I thought was really interesting. And the role of feedback could come and play in this moving forward in the research. So some really interesting things came about in my research study. But who cares about my research? You're here to learn what you want to do in your own doggone classroom. So let's talk about it, all right? So you want them to play. Well, what's your plan? So what we're going to do right now is, do we have time to do a couple of breakout room sessions? You guys tell me where we're at. Brandon, Kay? I can't hear Kay, so I don't know if Kay's talking to me or not.
I think we've got time for
Aspen's
whatever
been
we
was
want.
pointing at my mic that was in my hair. Um, Aspen, you're really helping me out today. I have to say thank you. Yeah, we have time. We can extend. We're doing a show and tell for the next hour, so we can extend.
All right.
Absolutely.
So with a show of hands, because I am a democracy, regardless, Kay, you'll take the numbers in the room. We have a couple of options. There are 2 breakout sessions I was going to do. And so what I was going to do was have you jot down for about 3 minutes what you would do. What do you want to gamify? What elements do you think you would use to gamify your classroom? And if you're already doing some game elements, are you basing them in theory or any models? So where did it come from? And so the other part is then we're going to work together in some teams. And so we're going to create, we've got about 18 people online. So that could be 3 breakout rooms if we wanted to do that. And then they're going to create a 1-module gamification plan. That's all we're going to do. And as we do this, I want to give you some hints. I'm going to give you hints from the literature. And we'll keep this up so we can take a screenshot and put it in everybody's breakout room so they've got access to this. But the things you want to think about are game elements, rules, what's your goals, your objectives. Is it going to be graded or ungraded? And then I'll give you some feedback on what you come up as a group. So I think what we can do right now is set the schedule for give 3 minutes and you all do independent work right now. So let's give 3 minutes and I'll set a timer. My timer is really groovy. It's disco music because I haven't managed to change it yet. Otherwise, it would be a St. Patrick's Day jig. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Go ahead and start thinking about what you would want to do or what you want to revise in your courses. So begin. That's the only time you get to see me dance, by the way, and my disco music. So, are you ready? Okay, break out the folks in your room. Brandon, go ahead and create those breakout rooms, and I'll come visit breakout rooms, and I can visit the classroom too if you want.
All right, so I think if we do three, it gives between 5 and 6, and we'll
Yep, that's
throw, I think,
perfect.
all of us in there.
Yep, that's
Although
perfect.
K2 is going to come into one
K2
of them.
is
So
me. Yeah, so
yeah,
ignore K2. You
all
know,
right.
you can leave that. Yeah. I need
Okay.
two screens.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it automatically, so I may have
Okay.
to swap some
Kate
people
likes
around.
it so much, she's going to join 2 different breakouts. She said,
Yeah. I can do it.
let's try it up in the same one. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I know.
You will be in 2 rooms. Here, I'm just gonna move you to room 3. And that still keeps us pretty even. So, all right,
Okay.
here we go, everyone.
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Or is it too late?
Too late. It's too late.
We'll work through a couple.
Yeah.
From the front of the room. We can do that. Oh, I might as well go back to the chat and share what I was going to say there.
All right. So I don't know. Do we want to take more time to discuss, or
we can just do it from the, we can do it. I'm so sorry. Apparently 7 minutes clearly was not enough time. All right. Where did Brandon, in your breakout room, where were you headed before we grossly got interrupted because I didn't manage the message coming to me fast enough?
Yeah, all good. I was about to click keep them open, and then they, it went away. So
I clicked the button. It was in front of me.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kay couldn't help it. Yeah, Kay couldn't. Yeah.
So I think, and because we're recording, I don't want to of course I want to put a mustache on.
Yeah.
But,
so you lost
record.
credibility.
Yeah.
Total credibility loss.
I did that a while ago. So I don't want to mention names, but somebody in our group was asking the question around being a little skeptical and wondering, if it's a generational thing or anything like that. And I will invite that person to come off of mute if they would like to ask their question. You can send it to me in a private message. Up to you.
I can ask it.
And you feel free to put it on me as well. I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask a question.
Go ahead.
I teach math, and you have a limited amount of time. And I know that you can incorporate games with the concepts, but you just have to take the time to do it in advance. And I'm just wondering, by the time you do the game, will you get all the concepts covered? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Annette, you're lucky. There is a ton of information of this being done in math. So you're going to want to do the research. Math is the last thing you will ever see me teach because I am so beautifully dyslexic, I would make it entertaining. And so they're smart enough not to let me do math. But in my research, math is one of the first ones that gets used because people have to take it and they find it boring, or they are unnerved by it because they didn't do, whatever the reasons behind it. So that is up to you. You make it part of gamification. The bottom line is this when it comes to this. When you choose to do this, you need to know it's going to take you time to do it well. The next thing I want everybody to do is take a deep breath. Come on, take a breath. I can tell whether you're breathing or not. Let it out. You're going to screw it up. And what you're going to do is you're going to laugh with your kids when you screw it up, and you're going to give them points. And you're going to go, Dolowitz messed up again. And that is what I do. I build a rapport with everybody. I take myself as seriously as Brandon is. Because at the end of the day, I learn from my learners just like they learn from me. And they learn very quickly that I'm very patient about that process. And Annette, I draw very firm boundaries with them as well. And so, my class is struggling right now because they're not doing, I've got a team who just can't pull it through. And I know who the individual is who's really killing the team. And so, but I've been doing this for a really long time. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've been using team-based learning for since 2015. So what's that, 8 years, 9 years, somewhere in there? 9 years. So I've been doing a lot of things. And again, math is very, very well studied because of the way it's done. And Catherine, I love what you said. The gamification could be at the review stage. It could be that you set them up in teams and you tell them to purposely mess up. We learn just as much from good and bad contrasts as well, and awarding levels and stuff. So you really want to think, and I really want you to go back to what is the goal, what is the objective. So I teach team-based learning, and the only part that I'm going to go off on this is that I don't care what my students know. I care what my students can do, because if they can do it, by definition, if they're able to do it and do it correctly, it typically means they know the information. Now in math, if you're like my spouse, she was great with coming up with the answer, but it wasn't done the way it was supposed to be done in the classroom, but she always came up with the right answer. And her logic was just fine. And so it really, you've got to think about that in the process of doing this. And another tip that I want to give you all is something that's important. Be willing to start with a quantity gamification scaffolding to quality. Okay, so you're going to want to get them involved. You're going to want to get those points easy. And then you're going to want to then do the infrequent and Skinner's work of operant conditioning and the varied schedule of rewards. But that's where the rules come in. Make more complex incorporating subject matter. Brandon, I agree. And again, Annette, I can do a quick search for you about gamification and math, and I promise you're going to come up with a lot of stuff. But I appreciate your skepticism. It's going to take time on your part to do something and do it well. But I want to leave you with something that's really, really important. And that is that there is a model out there that I found during my research, and I absolutely love this model. They're based out of Hong Kong, and it's Huang and Hugh. And they did a study in 2018, and they did another study in 2019, or 2022, 2021, 2022. And this is called the GAFCC model. And Annette, this may be what you want to think about of how I can do this. Have them set goals. What is it that they want to learn? What is it that they do weekly goals, do bi-weekly goals, however you want to do that. Access. The thing is, you've got to make sure that the kids have access to this at all times, that they don't have a barrier. So that becomes really important to understand. And gosh knows, COVID really made us aware of the incredible amounts and types of barriers that can be there for stuff. The next thing is the challenges. So you can give them math challenges, right? And then that can be individual or it can be group, depending on what you're trying to reinforce in the classroom. The next thing is that collaboration. Again, the challenges in the collaboration. Do they do it individually? Do they share with each other and figure out where they went wrong? They learn better from each other, but you are still the expert when they get stumped. All right. So again, this is what I love about their model. It is based on 5 different motivational theories. And I want to sit down and have a conversation now that my dissertation is done. So I'll be contacting Huang and Hugh and working on implementing it in the United States, because one of their comments is we've been doing this in Hong Kong, and Asian education is completely different than in the United States. And so they want to see if this model works better in the United States with the diversity that we have in our student base. The other part that's beautiful about this model, y'all, is they actually tell you how to do it. Here are your steps. Okay. And the elaborate feedback becomes very important. So for folks who are feeling a little bit like Annette and we're not really sure about this, one of the things that you want to do as the professor is that you want to give elaborate feedback. When they do those challenges, you can have the system feedback to them, but then you want to be able to give feedback. And that feedback is, you've done a really good job. Here's where you had mistakes, and here's where I want you to go next. And what Huang and Hugh found in this is that it's very important that we help guide them to the next step with that elaborate feedback. It needs to be timely. And they talk about the 5 different types of feedback so that we can really understand that a little bit better. So again, I plan on reaching out to them and seeing if I can do some more researching here with their model, because their model to me is a very sound model. And it really gets us thinking about the process of what we want to do, how we're going to evaluate it, and how we reward, and which game elements we're using, of which is important in that GAFCC model. Okay. Kay, I know I'm running out of time. So here are my takeaways. You all can read. I've talked enough. And thank you. And you are all welcome to have my slides. It does not bother me at all. I just beg that you don't duplicate them and give them to everybody else. But definitely, if you're interested, look at Huang and Hughes. There is another model of gamification implementation that came out about 2014, 15 by Langley and his colleagues. This one is just really sound as far as I'm concerned. I think we could find a lot of support for it. And maybe using their model, I would have found more luck with Daichev et al.'s, but I don't know, you know.
Can I have your lit review? Like, this is it really is fascinating. Like, gamification is well, like, I mean, we go into the three terms that you introduced to us in the first place, and yeah, that's been a struggle for a long time to clear up that confusion. But I'm all about, like, I love gamification. I love games-based learning.
There's a lot, yeah. And I would tell Annette in her classroom, don't go gamification, go game-based. There's a lot of good games out there, and that as you get comfortable with the game-based math games, then you bring in and decide if gamification is worth it. Math is one that I would say should be game-based. And I think science has some really good stuff for game-based. But your labs, you might be able to do gamification in labs, for those of you that run labs instead. So I agree with people who will say you can't do gamification. Well, you don't want to take the time to do it. And sometimes game-based and just going all in is better. And yes, your students will like games. We are programmed for that. We're programmed to learn that. It helps build social skills again. So I'm glad, Annette, that you brought up, I'm kind of skeptical about this, because you're not the only voice out there that's skeptical, not even remotely. And again, at the end of the day, it's thinking about those goals and objectives and what is it that we really want? What do we want our students to do? And that is us as experts who reverse design and say, okay, well, how do we know they're actually doing it? But it has a lot of information on how to motivate people using different game mechanics. Oh, excellent. Aspen, thank you. I'm going to have to get that. I'm going to have to get Oculus, Octalius. I'll have to, all right, I need to copy and print this. I need to copy and paste this. Hopefully it will let me do that. Yep. Oh, excellent. Very good. Any other questions that you all have for me? Oh, beautiful. Done. Yes, actually, I did. I saw this during my research, but I didn't get into it for some reason. I did not. I did see his model. In fact, I actually think I bought his book because I recognized the design. Yes, I think I bought his stuff. And it is Cho. I do. Yeah, I knew I recognized his name. I do cite his work from 2015. He is a very interesting person. He's actually a practitioner. But some of us know you can take me down rabbit holes, Brandon. I'll fish you back out. Oh, good, Catherine. His stuff is good. Yin's stuff is good too. Or Yi. Is it Yi? It's Yi. It might be Yi. Brandon, what I can do is right now I can give you my reference section, and I'd be glad to send that to Gay so that you can take a look at the references I pulled. I'm not comfortable giving out any of my dissertation yet because it has not made it through the graduate school. And until it makes it through the graduate school, now trust me, I put a ton of it into AI for helping me make my language more simple, because ironically, I had a Chinese advisor English is probably a second or a third language. And she kept challenging me on English. And I'm like, I can't do this. And I would go to AI to make my stuff more simple and more easy to read. But yeah, I'll be glad to share my references. Yeah.
Fully understand and thank you. Appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. But yes, Chow is great. His stuff is great. Speaking of a rabbit hole, actually, I didn't want to go down his rabbit hole because he was a practitioner. And so that's why I opted to stay away from it. Cap got brought in because Cap was actually introduced into one of our game courses. And we had to read his book for the semester, along with John Paul Gee. And his work. And so I shouldn't be surprised I ended up in gamification for my dissertation, quite honestly. But yeah. All right. Any other than overwhelming you in about an hour's worth of time? Dave, talk to me. You've got this really perplexed look on your face, like you're really
See?
Cool, Annette. You're welcome. See, this is why they don't put their pictures on, because they start to learn that I know names and then I call them. Excellent, my pirate Chris. Ahoy, matey.
Yeah, I'm so old out, going way back. I had a professor who had a class of 600 people, and she took Polaroids of everyone, and we wrote our names down, and she would stare at you in this movie theater auditorium, and she would call on you. It's just frightening.
So I couldn't do the Zoom group because they kept putting, I'm from the Atlanta location, I'm from the Cincinnati location. So it was like, all right, my Cincinnati location, I was doing that. But I had probably about 30 people in the room, and I had their names down like this, and they were like, oh man, because they thought they could hide from me. And it's like, no, I'm one of those mean people. Oh, well, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. Catherine, I was going to comment on you. Your offline picture is so freaky because it's like you're there and you're like frozen. So if someone would think you're frozen on a screen, well done. Well done. You would never get away with that in a meeting with me, but well done. Oh.
Okay, so Annetta, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And yes, this really helped, I think, further the discussion we've been having so far today.
So far today. I'm sorry I haven't been able to come because I really am interested. And I'm still really busy, unfortunately. So. All right, y'all. It was a pleasure. Enjoy. And again, Kay and Chris know how to get a hold of me. Feel free to send me questions. I'll be glad to come along and give you some feedback or ideas. Kay's going to be really glad I'm not there because she knows how crazy and creative I can be too. So, all right, y'all, have a good one and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, then I'd say we leave here.
Okay.
Give it a couple minutes and then go into the next one.
Okay.